Now that he's won, do you think there's any possibility that Trump could actually make the dollar great again?
If it was only up to him, right? In a way, the checks and balances and the design of the U.S. government with the three houses, the three I'm talking about is Senate, Representatives, and the White House. You got to ask permission. You know, he could be the greatest CEO that comes to Washington, but he's got this board of directors that if they don't agree, then he doesn't get much done. So how that log jams his efforts is, yeah, okay, great. Get the world's richest man and a very vivacious, individual, Vivek, entrepreneurial, and get him to take a axe to government budget. But those cuts, and if I know you're pretty young, but maybe some of the audience will remember 15, 20 years ago, we had to go through a base closure process. We were in the position of closing a lot of military bases around the world and a lot in America. Well, that's great. Yeah, we should reduce government and we don't need them anymore and they're obsolete. Cold War is over. Just don't shut down the base in my town. Just not my town. So every representative is getting other bases to get closed in other states, just not in their state. Because those representatives go home and answer to their locale, and the people are pissed. Like, why did you let this base get closed? That is the impediment to change in the framework of our government system. Because these career politicians want to keep their job and be reelected forever, they can't bring the truth to bear down on our finances or on policy. So, it's an example of the border too. We can talk about that, but it's called trespassing. I can kick you out of my house if you're here and I didn't invite you. So how can you come into the country uninvited? And, the government pays attention to laws and it ignores others. So no, you can identify $2 trillion of wasteful spending, which is what Elon Musk and Vivek have conceived of a number, place on a map. But can you get Congress to send that $5 trillion instead of a $7 trillion budget to the White House to be signed into law? No. Yeah, then they'll make a lot of noise about maybe cutting $100 billion here and $100 billion there. But I mean, 1 billion seconds is 31 years. 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years. So these hundreds of billions don't mean anything.
What would you do if you're in his shoes to try and improve the state of the economy?
I don't know if it could happen fast enough, but if you thought, what if we flooded the world with our oil and we let it go and drove the price down to $35 a barrel and just crushed Saudi and crushed Russia? And the government could benefit off the export. Yeah, who knows? They need revenue. And, they're not like Venezuela had the fourth largest or one of the largest oil producers in the world a while ago until they kicked the people who know how to get oil out of the ground out of the country because they thought they could do it themselves and they suck at that. So now people are eating zoo animals to make it through the day. It'd be cool if the government had some way where it was hands off. It was like, yeah, if you drill for oil on our lands, federal lands, we get half the money. That'd be cool. I don't know if Exxon and Mobil and other companies would drill at that penalty. Maybe they would. They just don't have a source of revenue other than taxes and their money printing process. And that's what's killing the system. Their ability to pay bills that are owed with printed money, two things. The bills keep getting bigger. That's the cause of the problem. That's the demand for the printed money. If the bills were getting smaller, they would print less money. So if you can't make the source, the demand of the bills, the retired baby boomer community, if you can't make them go away, which you can't, then you can't make the bills get smaller. So therefore, you can't print less money. You have to print more and more every year because costs keep going up. As the government prints, it creates inflation in healthcare, in everything, every single thing, labor. Right? You got to pay the people more. If the cost of living goes up, you got to pay them more so they'll continue to work for you. And they can't work for you and go home and be starving with no groceries. They got to be able to afford living. So as you pay them more, everything costs more. So everything the government has tried to do to make things better for people, and when it comes to financial things for sure, they've just made everything worse because they make everything more untenably expensive, which means they have to print more. And you can't stop that. Trump and all of his buddies, and I voted for him. My recent Substack, I just came out and said it. I voted for him because, oh my God, are we going to vote for someone who can't even form a sentence? When she's put under pressure, she literally can't have a discussion. You can't have that. What if Russia hits Ukraine with a nuke and Kamala was president? She would dither over how to respond. The response that Trump might have might be wrong, but at least there's a response. No response is insane. You can't have that. You can't have someone who can't form thoughts, so under pressure. So when you look at the problem, it can't go away. What Trump can do, he can do things he can do from the White House. He can close the border. He can perhaps deport people. There'll be a lot of lawsuits in the sanctuary states to prevent that from happening. But when you got to push on Congress to do something, that's like herding cats. 500 of them or 600 of them, senators and the representatives together. They don't have to listen. Their real boss is getting reelected. The people they represent is who they work for or need to please. So this probably will be the 4 years that snuffs out all hope, because you finally got your best shot at re-engineering American finances. And when it can't happen, because I don't care, math doesn't listen to language, it listens to math. And if you can't change the math, then you can't change the math. And the math blows everything up because it's headed in one direction, and that's due south.
He also floated the possibility of abolishing the IRS and replacing it with tariffs. Are you for or against that idea generally?
I know it's kind of sound utopian. What if people just policed themselves and sent in their taxes, and they were very simple to do, and there just weren't many write-offs? I think most people would send in their tax money. But when they know that their tax money is being wasted on things they don't get to choose to support, then they're not interested in that body of government being, existing, because we don't work for them. And we don't want to give up our hard-earned money that many of us risk to earn. Small business owners are risking their living. And they don't want to give up that hard-earned money when they don't see the government with any skin in the game. We don't give a damn that you think, like Obama said, you paved the roads and ran electrical wiring on the telephone poles. We don't care. Of course you did that, or we wouldn't work at all. New York City wants to tax you for driving in this city. It's infuriating. So I'm for a simplified plan, some processing agency that collects tax revenue, but not this oppressive force that can ruin people's lives or play games politically against certain entities. They don't agree with what they're saying. These government bureaucracies can never be political. They have to just be inert facilitation agencies that handle the processing of things, but never something that could oppress the people. It was President Lincoln, who wanted a financial edge over the South, that created this federal income tax idea. And it had to do, I guess, with people working off federal lands or within the federal government. They got taxed, and it was a 2-year moratorium. As far as I've studied this, may not have it dead to rights accurate, but this is what I've read. And when 2 years came around, they gave it another bit of time, and then they kind of liked the juice. They started to get this income they had never had before, and then they just blew it out. So it is literally against the Constitution for us to be taxed on our labor. It is in the frickin' books, the first book this country ever wrote, the Constitution. It's in that book. But somehow it's subverted by the will of government, who has the power to oppress. There's no one behind them that can oppress the government. That's why this is so ruinous. They've absolutely outgrown their purpose and suitability for the people who live here.
The more power you give to the government, you rarely get that power back. They just take and take and take.
Right. They're on the destruction side of things. Yeah. They're not on the when they say they've created jobs, or Obama coined the new phrase for tax revenue as an investment. Let the corporate world make those investments. Let states make those investments. Governors are running a business of their state. Much better to have 50 CEOs of the country than one that makes decisions for all 50. And there's so many times they ram stuff down your throat. I love Law and Order, the TV show, and I was watching the second season, the original. And, they mentioned this thing came up where this woman had the right to let her baby die, her 6-year-old die, because their religion didn't believe in doctors. And they say, how could this be going on in New York? And they said, well, the federal government ran some thing at the states that said, if you don't, we'll give you this money as long as you create a spiritual belief system exit clause for this kind of thing. And if you don't provide this into law, this provision, and you can't have the federal money. And what they said in the show, I don't know if it's accurate, sounds like a true story, and it's happened thousands of times, I'm sure, where the government extorts the executives of the states by dangling billions of dollars in front of them. And of course, if it gets into the news, hey, your governor declined the $3 billion we were going to give Louisiana, then the governor gets unelected. It's just sick. You can't have a system of government that does that crap. You can't. It isn't a government. It's just an evil machine.
I don't know if you saw recently the backlash to the Jaguar ads. They released a woke ad, and because of the backlash, their stock price plummeted. It got me thinking, why do you think so many companies these days are more interested in being woke than being profitable?
You know, I think it's a psychological question, and thank you for asking me this. I have no degree in psychology, but I certainly studied my own. I've worked hard on myself being a better person and moved the character defects away from my being that I put there as I reacted to things that came at me when I was young and in my 20s and so. And I think that perhaps when you start off with politically correct, shortly after that, everyone gets a trophy. Then you get the shame your parents may have given you when you were young, and you start feeling that about your successes. And you start looking for, well, I've done so well in life and so many are struggling, and you want to make things fair for them. And that's normal. It's normal to have empathy for others. But why give them handouts? Why disrespect them and message to them that they need special laws to find a way for them to fit into society? Shame is a powerful, powerful destructive force. It's an ass kicking with no bruises, and I think it's psychological. If I were willing to offer my humble opinion on it, because you don't see poor companies getting into DEI. You don't see companies that are just getting started going, you know, as we go to our investor to raise money for our company and do our thing, we're going to be DEI front and center. They don't lead with that. So they're not successful yet. It's only the wildly successful companies and countries that are into this stuff. Mainly, it's treating a symptom. Why are there disenfranchised people en masse that you hear about grouping together on social media platforms? Because the governments have sucked at helping conduct life and the pursuit of happiness in the countries they oligarch over. That's the real cause. So when they get into this identity politics crap where they're like, I know, I'll get elected this way because I'll come off with an empathetic message for the disenfranchised, the left behind, and forgotten. And that'll pull on the heartstrings of voters in a way they haven't been pulled on before. That's all it is. That's all it's got to be, because where's the message come from? It comes from politics. Their jobs are temporary. They got to keep earning them back every few years. That's sick. God doesn't make junk. But we make confusion, for sure. The clarity would naturally come back to humanity when the governments just step out of the frickin' way. You think, and especially in Europe, they think that the government's good. I know that you guys have a little reputation that you were once all monarchies, and you and I would be raking wheat unless you were the son of a noble, and our kids would be raking wheat, and their kids would be raking wheat, and there was no upward mobility in a monarchy. Unless one of our daughters was, catching the eye of some nobleman, then we were drawn into nobility. So when you destroy monarchies and have that government, that monarchy money go into the agencies, you've improved life. Going from a democracy to socialism is not improving, and socialism can go to true democracy if the government can just get out of the way and the people could wake up and go, you know what, I don't want handouts. I don't want legislated fairness. I want a system where the trophy my kid wins is hard fought for. And yes, we need to allow the human race to understand and get with disappointment, because that's the biggest currency on the planet, is disappointment. She wouldn't go with me to the prom. I didn't get the promotion. I didn't get the job. I didn't win at the end of the season. Disappointment is a much bigger currency than winning.
I don't know if you've read the news that Germany and I think Finland recently told their citizens to prepare for World War III. So assuming we're not obliterated by a nuclear bomb, what can the average person do to prepare for something like a world war?
I just think, just in my own head, no financial advice. I'm not a trained economist, but I'm someone who hates to be wrong. Hates it to be wrong in the way where I'll study the hell out of something so I don't say something that is wrong. If you can't admit you're wrong when you're wrong, you just don't have any friends. So I'll admit I'm wrong when I'm wrong. But I don't want to be wrong, and so I researched and think. And what I've learned, for me, thank God, is to understand anything, just go to the ground. Go to the source of the thing. So if you play out World War III today, everyone's in ashes. What do these governments want more of? More power, more money. So I don't think there'll ever be a World War III. I don't. Because who wins? No one. Today, the weapons are way too damn powerful. Way too powerful. And there's way too many of them. No one wins. But subterfuge and uncertainty and erosion and second guessing and weak-kneed politicians and weak-kneed leaders in the damn military is how you'll get more of what you want. So I don't think there'll be a World War III in the way that people would think of World War II or World War I. But what you can get is financial Armageddon. If we quit spending money in China, then China goes into the dark ages. They're all back in the rice paddies the next day. So why would you could try, though, to make our mindset slave to Chinese think tanks and come on to thinking like they do and become the bitch to them. But they would never want to obliterate Wall Street because then they would all be in the dark ages. I mean, we consume a lot of oil. It's our dollar that makes all the commerce happen. That will eventually die from the math problem that Congress keeps creating. But I don't know. It's certainly a great reason to spend a lot of money on the defense side of things. And I think all countries like that idea, sadly. But they have the ability to print. So they have their own financial power supply that can get them to run amok of the society they wanted to cohabitate with that they don't. But it's scary, and I get it. Why would Biden allow long-range missiles suddenly 2 months before his exit to be used by Ukraine inside Russia? Is that to help Ukraine have a stronger hand in negotiating when Trump comes in and goes, this damn war is over? It's over. You two are meeting, or we're going to raise holy hell financially for you both.
Let's say we're in this world where there's this chaos, where there's this power grab by the elites, the governments, the people in charge. People can take control of their finances. People can take control of what they've got and make plans for the future, for when the war will eventually end, if it starts at all. They can do stuff to protect what they've already got.
So, can you have a cabin outside of a populated city center, right? Even if it's a trailer somewhere that's on a river or creek, can you have some dried goods out there? And can you have your money in something that's not in government money? You could be in a dinghy tied to the Titanic and go, well, at least we're not on that ship. You're still tied to it if your money's in the dollar or your money's in the euro. And again, no financial advice, just trying to create a picture for people to think for themselves and start asking questions. I believe the questions fundamentally are way more important than the answers. Because if you aren't starting at the trailhead of curiosity, man, you aren't going anywhere new, and you're not finding a way to solve something. The human race cannot do the impossible. They can only do the possible. So making a computer out of a silicone chip was possible. It wasn't impossible. Every single discovery is just waiting for us to cross over it. Humans cannot do the impossible. So people can take, like life on Earth is always going to be struggle and difficult. We work hard to insulate ourselves from those difficulties, those unforeseen circumstances, right? Money in the bank, some bad health issue comes around the corner, insurance doesn't cover it, you got the money to cover it, and you live on. So preservation needs to have a home next to risk for growth. There needs to be balance there. And people could look at themselves and go, what would happen if the city was attacked? Where would we go? Duck and cover? Hide under your desk in your den? What if you had a bug out crib? And if your money is tied up in the government financial world and you can't get to it, then you don't have it anymore. So could you have money outside of the man-made financial world? And that's gold and silver. And these ideas might be ridiculous, but preparedness is what wins the day. Being prepared, thinking ahead, recognizing truths. Governments are edging closer and closer and closer to insolvency, which makes them more and more desperate to secure resources that they continue to wither away as they print money. And the cycle goes on until Mother Nature says, enough.